Hey, what's up guys, Rafal here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how I made these shots from our Matrix video in After Effects. This was really simple to do in After Effects. There are no third-party plugins, there are no complex expressions that you need to know. It's basically just tracking and masking. I'm not going to go over how I collected these shots on the day of filming because I already explained that in our earlier video, and if you want to see them, go ahead and click right up here. Now, a quick note, I'm not an After Effects guru. I don't know the ins and outs of everything in After Effects, so chances are as you're watching this video, you may find a slightly better way to do what I'm explaining, and if that's the case, please let me know in the comments below because I would love to know how you would have done this in a different way. So with all that said and done, let's jump into After Effects and I'm going to show you guys how I put these shots together. All right guys, here we are in After Effects. I have my 3 clips right up here. I'm only going to go over the details of one of them because it's pretty much the same process for all 3 clips. So we have my main clip here, which is of Morpheus, and then we have the clip that's going to act as the reflections for his glasses. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the clip and I'm going to create a new composition with it. And it's going to be in 4K. We want it to be as large of a resolution as possible just so that the tracking data and everything has as much information, as many pixels as possible. So the first thing we need to do is track this shot. I used these buttons right here on the glasses as my tracking points. So right here I have my tracker window, and if you don't have this open, you could just go right up here to window and the tracker is going to be clicked right here. So you can go ahead and click that and it'll come up right here. So we're going to click track motion and we're going to make sure we have rotation set as well. That's going to give us 2 tracking points, and I'm going to go ahead and take my first tracking point, pop it right over here. I'm going to resize it. I'm going to get a bit of this clip right here as well. It just has some details to follow, and just make sure that it has a little bit of space. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. It doesn't need that much room to search. Saviour didn't move his head around too much. I'm going to go ahead and take the second tracker and go ahead and pop it right over here. Again, doing the same thing, giving it enough room to track, kind of like that. I don't want these to be too big because if these are too large, then they're going to be searching way too much of the space and it's going to take longer to track. So I'm just going to keep them as small as possible while still retaining a good size for them to actually track what I need to. So I got my position set and I'm just going to track forward. All right, so we have our tracking data right here. The next thing I'm going to do is create a new layer and I'm going to make a new null object. I'm going to hit edit target and select the null object just to make sure, and I'm going to hit apply dimensions X and Y. I'm going to hit OK, and now all that tracking data is attached to our null object, and this null object is going to be the foundation of all the effects that we put in from here on in. So the next thing we need to do is we need to mask out these glasses, so any clips that we put within these glasses are just going to appear on the lenses and nowhere else. So to do that, I'm going to go to layer, new solid, or you can also hit Control Y or Command Y on a Mac, and we're going to make sure that it is 3840 by 2160, and we're going to hit OK. It could really be any color, it doesn't have to be black. I'm going to go ahead, bring it up here for a second. I'm actually going to rename it to right lens matte. I'm going to turn it off really quick, and it's going to be the right lens. So I'm going to create a ellipse circle, ellipse mask, and I'm going to just go ahead and kind of shape it to the shape of this lens. I'm going to need to add a few more points here just to get it accurate. So I'm going to hit G to bring up the pen tool, pop this in, bring this out, hit G again, pop this right here. I'm just going to kind of fine tune. And by the way guys, if you hold Control or Command, you can move just one of these points instead of moving both of them. If I just move both of them like this, they both go at the same time. So if you want to just move one, hold down Control or Command and it does its thing. And so we have that. And the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to hit M to bring up the mask path. I'm going to hit this stopwatch and I'm just going to go through the clip really quick. Oh, whoops. Before we do that, we got to parent this to the null object. Don't forget to do that. So now it's going to move with the lens. And you can see throughout the clip, it sort of comes off the lens. Not a big deal. That's why we created the mask path, because we're just going to fine tune these shapes and just make sure that the matte sticks to the lens throughout the entire clip. We're just gonna fine tune a little bit, move forward, fine tune a little bit. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another mask within this mat. I'm gonna hit it and I'm gonna zoom in here. And what I'm doing is I want to put a mask around this point because I wanna mask this part away from the mat. The reason why is because if I don't do this, then the video is going to be floating on top of this knuckle and it's gonna not look realistic. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing and I'm gonna set this to subtract. And if I turn this back on, you can see now that this is visible again. I'm gonna turn this off. I'm gonna go back in here. I'm gonna do the same thing for this clip right here. And actually, before I do that, I should adjust this mask as well, the same way we did for the lens. I'm just gonna go forward a bit. He does move his head a lot on this section here, so the mask may float away a little bit. So we just wanna make sure that it's refined and it's sticking to it pretty well. I'm gonna do it one more time, and I'm gonna create a mask around this clip right here. So I'm gonna use the pen tool for this. And I'm actually going to take this exposure slider and I'm gonna bring it up a bit just so that it's a little easier for me to see. And by the way, that exposure slider does not appear in your final render. It just makes it easier to see what you're working with. And if you ever wanna reset it, you can just click on this aperture ring right here and it's going to reset everything for you. But I just raise it up because I wanna see the masking, the lines, because it is a pretty dark image after all. So I'm gonna bring it up again, click outside the mask, and I'm just gonna go ahead and just make a shape. It looks like this kind of floats away a bit. Forward a bit more. Fine tune here a little bit, kind of floating away. And by the way, guys, I'm holding down space to move the canvas around. Make sure you do, because if you don't, you'll potentially move the entire clip, which we don't want. So make sure you hold down space to bring up the hand tool if you want to kind of navigate your way around the canvas. Cool, that looks pretty good. And then make sure that's set to subtract. Awesome. So now, if I turn this layer back on, you'll see that we have the black right above our lens, and then we have these 2 points here that are making sure that these 2 points are going to be over our clip. And I'm just gonna go ahead and feather everything just a little bit here. Let's set the feather to the lenses at about 10, and we'll set this feather to maybe 5, just to have it a bit of a natural fall off. Everything is light, nice and soft. Great, so this is one lens done. We are going to do the same thing for the other lens. I'm just gonna go ahead, again, Command or Control Y. I'm gonna say left lens matte. Turn this off. Again, make sure you parent it to the null object. And we're going to go ahead and create an ellipse tool, draw it around, hit V to bring up the pointer, kind of adjust a little bit at first, just like that. And then hit G to bring up the pen tool. And we're just gonna add a point here. Go back to V for the pointer. We're just gonna adjust, hold down Control to just adjust this. There we go. It's a little far out here. There we go. Sweet. Let's go ahead, hit this stopwatch, and we're gonna move forward. Cool, so again, same thing. We'll create, with this layer selected, we'll create another mask. Draw it around this button, knuckle, whatever you want to call it. Bring it in. Make sure that we have the stopwatch clicked. I'm gonna go forward a bit. Still looks pretty good. Kind of comes off here a little bit, but it's not too bad. Any imperfections here, any minor imperfections will be hidden by the feather once we feather the mask out, so it'll be a bit forgiving. We'll do it one more time with the pen tool. One last thing, let's go ahead and feather these out. So I did 10 on the lens, and I did 5 on the smaller parts. So here is what we have so far. The mats are following the glasses pretty well. And like I said earlier, these mats are going to serve as our guides for the videos to pop through. So now it's time to bring in our footage, and like I said earlier, we do have a video that explains how we filmed everything. And again, if you want to see that video, go ahead and click right up here. But long story short, we filmed these elements separately so that way they would be easier for me to manipulate in post, and I'll show you why right now. So we have a portion of him holding the gummy bear, and if I move forward a bit more, we remove that gummy bear while Neo still looks the same. And the reason why I did that was to give me that flexibility to take this portion of the clip into the other lens without seeing the hand. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take this clip and pop it into the left lens. I'm gonna minimize everything really quick. So again, double click this, and we have our portions here. And by the way I selected these in and out points was I just brought the cursor to the point where I wanted the clip to start, hit the end point right here, brought it to right before he removes his hand, and I hit the out point right here. And when I drag this clip in, it's gonna go ahead and just bring in that portion of the clip. So now what I'm gonna do is set this layer to alpha matte, and I'm gonna make sure that it's under the right lens because we want it to poke through the right lens. And so now it's only gonna show through this matte right here. So I'm gonna bring the scale down. I'm gonna hold down Shift so that it maintains its proportions. And I'm gonna pop it into this lens here. And there's one thing I forgot to do. I'm gonna go to the effects tab and I'm gonna type in basic, and we're gonna put on a basic 3D effect. And here on swivel, I'm just gonna turn it 180 degrees because this is a reflection. So we wanna make sure that it's actually reflecting. I'm gonna scale it down a bit more, and we're going to pop it right here. And remember, the reason why I put in those other two masks is because these two wouldn't really reflect this video clip. If these weren't here, then it would look weird. In fact, I'm just gonna show you really quick. So if I pop this on and I set this to add and I set this to add, then you can see now it's not really looking real anymore. So you wanna make sure that you have those parts selected and set them to subtract so that it looks a bit more realistic. One thing I wanna do also is I'm gonna double click this clip to open it up in its own window, and then I'm gonna double click the ellipse tool, and that's going to just create a circle mask around the whole clip. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and feather that. I'm gonna feather it pretty heavily. And the reason why I'm gonna do that is so that we don't have any harsh edges along the edge, right? I'm gonna bring up the expansion as well. I'm gonna hit M to bring up the expansion, there it is. And I'm gonna bring it down. That's just gonna make sure that I don't have any hard edges along the edge of this composition, right? So it's just gonna be a bit more forgiving on the edges as well, just gonna kind of fade away instead of having a hard cut. So now we have this clip here, and I'm just gonna adjust it so that I can see the pill, and I can see Neo as well. You can adjust it as well. You don't have to be uniform in your scale. If you want to stretch it a little bit more, go for it. It is distortion, so in fact, anything it'll add to the effect. But what we are looking for is just to make sure that we have Neo and we have the object, which is the blue gummy bear. Now, originally when I tried doing this, I did parent the clip to the null object because I figured it was going to be moving around with Morpheus. But what I didn't like is just how much it did move around, and it sort of looked like a projection instead of a reflection. And so what I ended up doing was I didn't parent it, and instead I made my own keyframes to sort of flow with the movement of Morpheus's head. So I'm going to hit the stopwatch on position here, and I'm going to move forward a couple of frames. And I'm just gonna ever so slightly just sort of move in the direction that Morpheus is moving, right? He moves a little quicker here, so I'm gonna move a little quicker here, just like that. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to bring up the graph window here. I'm gonna hit X and Y so that way we can kind of control the fluidity of these movements, right? So what I wanna do is make these Bezier keyframes instead of linear keyframes, so that way I'm able to manipulate the flow of these, the easing, that's what it's called, the easing. So again, I'm just gonna very gently kind of move with Morpheus's head. If he moves a little bit to the right or to the left, I'm going to move very slightly to the right or to the left. So he moves a little bit to the left there. I'm gonna do the same thing. Kind kind of moves down. I'm gonna move down. I'm actually gonna remove all these. And here's what I was talking about with the feather. You can see how it just kind of naturally falls off the reflection, and it's not an abrupt cut. It just makes the effect a bit more forgiving on the imperfections. So it moves down a bit. I'm gonna move down as well, very slightly. Like, these movements are not big at all, because I don't want them to be. So it moves up a lot, so I'm gonna go move up a lot as well. I'm just gonna kind of see what I'm working with. So you kind of see how it is sort of moving with it. It looks pretty good to me. It's got a little bit of a floatiness to it. So I'm gonna go ahead, click on this graph editor to close it. And now we have our clip in the lens, in the frame. It's kind of sticking to it, but it looks a little too clear. Remember, this is a reflection. So what we can do is I'm gonna select the clip. I'm gonna hit T to bring its opacity up. I'm gonna set it to like something like 75, just to make it a bit more transparent. And I'm also going to change it to lighten. And that's going to make it look a bit more like a reflection, right? Now you could change it to lighten and just keep it at 100%, but it is still a bit too clear, so I do kind of want, I'm gonna see if I set it to 80. I think 80 might be a little better. So we have our first clip sticking to the lens pretty well, and the next thing we're going to do is create the same thing for the other lens. So at this point, it's time to add our second clip, but the good news is that we don't have to repeat everything we just did because we already have all those effects put into the first clip. So at this point, it's pretty much just copying and pasting everything onto the second clip. I'm gonna go ahead, turn off this clip because we don't need it right now. And I'm going to go back into this clip. And now I'm going to see where the clip starts, where I want him to start right here. Again, he's holding his position very, very still. Actually, I need to go to the endpoint first. I'm gonna hit an endpoint here, go right back to where Morpheus removes his hand, right there, hit the endpoint. And just so that we have a little bit of extra room, I'm gonna go ahead and set an out point right there. So I'm gonna bring that clip, bring it underneath the left lens mat. I'm gonna do the same thing, set it to alpha, and we're gonna do the same thing. But because we set everything in this clip, all we have to do is copy all of these attributes and paste them into here. So check this out, we have the scale. So I'm just gonna head, copy the scale, Command or Control C, paste it, and now it's small. And I'm also going to double click this clip, and we're gonna do the same thing with the feather, double click the ellipse tool, and just add a heavy feather to it to soften up the edges, and then bring up the expansion and bring it in, just like that, so that we don't have any of that harshness at the edge. We're going to click on our first clip, bring up the position. I'm going to copy the position of the X and Y, go to the beginning of the clip, and I'm going to paste everything. And what's gonna happen is it's going to copy everything here. So it's right here, but what we can do is take the anchor point, and all we have to do is just slide it back into place with the anchor point. So that way, all that's gonna happen is it's going to have the same movements as the clip here, but it's gonna happen here instead. So that's just saving us a bunch of time. And actually, I'm gonna turn this clip on as well so I can see. And actually doing that reminded me that I forgot to add the basic 3D. So let's go ahead and do that. Basic 3D, 180, not 1480, 180. There we go. So again, we're just gonna fine tune the anchor point just to make it match. And then, just like we did in the first clip, set it to lighten, set the transparency to, what did I set this one to, 80? Same thing here, set it to 80. And now, we have these clips moving at the same time. So let's go ahead and recap everything we did one more time with this other clip. So again, take your main clip, create a new composition with it, track the data with the position and rotation. Make sure you give the tracking data enough data to actually stick to the video. Go to layer and create a new null object. Take your tracking data, apply it to that null object, hit apply. Create a new solid, one for the lens. Create a mask around that lens. You can adjust this slider to help you see. Parent your layer to the null object. Set a keyframe for the mask path. Move down the clip and adjust as needed to make sure that your mask is with the lens the entire time. Create another mask for any objects that aren't reflective. Make sure you adjust those masks as well. Feather your masks out so that the fall off looks more natural. Repeat the process for the other lens. Bring in your first clip, add basic 3D to it, flip it 180 degrees. When it's underneath the right lens, set it to alpha matte, resize as you need it to. Open up that clip in its own composition, double click the ellipse tool, feather out the mask a little bit for a natural fall off, and bring in the expansion so that you don't have any harsh edges. Set position keyframes throughout the clip so that it looks like it's kind of floating with the reflections. When you're happy, set it to lighten and bring the opacity down to about 80%. This will make it look a bit more reflective. Bring in your other clip, set it to alpha matte under the other lens, copy the effects of the first clip onto the second clip. Remember to mask out this clip too. Copy the position keyframes of the first clip onto the second clip, and then adjust the anchor point so that the second clip fits within the lens. Set the blending mode to lighten and the opacity to 80. And there you have it. And that's pretty much it, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more filmmaking and photography tips and tricks. One last thing, if you saw a technique that I was doing where you thought, oh, I could totally do this a different way, let us know in the comments. Like, I'm really excited to know how you would have done this differently. If there's an easier way to do anything that I did, let us know. We're all learning from each other, so drop your suggestions in the comments and I'll be happy to read them and learn from you guys as well. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.